Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. I'm Don Helbig, alongside, as always, with Ryan Sir. Ryan, how's it going as we prepare here for episode number 39 of the Attractions Group podcast?
39. God, I feel like I thought we were closer on a year, but I was looking back at the archives, and I think we're not until about June did we hit a year. But 39, that's incredible that we've made it this far and no blood has been shed yet. But yeah, so warm summer day here at Castle Ryan here in northern Kentucky, and it was 78 degrees today, so I am in a dandy mood. How are you, Don?
Doing great. Same thing with you. The warmer it is, the better I feel.
Exactly. Awesome. Cool. Well, just as a reminder, so for those of you who are watching the show for the first time, welcome. If you're listening to us via the audio version, welcome as well. But make sure that you subscribe on YouTube because, I mean, we're pretty handsome people, first of all. And secondly, we do release some exclusive content on YouTube occasionally. So don't miss out. We talked about Dream More. We talked about the Hatfields and McCoy's Dinner Feud show, Dollywood, all sorts of stuff on some exclusive content last week on the YouTube channel. If you're watching YouTube, then cool, you're one step ahead of the game. But if you prefer audio, we can be found on your favorite podcast apps. And if you want to keep up with the news, we've been going hard on Twitter at attractions_GRP.
Yeah, it's been great to see the engagement that we've had over the past couple weeks on our Twitter. We're now over 500 followers. So, tell a friend about the Attraction Group podcast. Ask them to subscribe, ask them to follow us. And we got some really good things planned in the weeks ahead. Ryan, what we got going on tonight?
Well, we've got an old friend of mine on the show. We've got Brandon from Theme Park Predictions. And I've known Brandon since about 2004. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Brandon from Theme Park Predictions. How's it going, Brandon?
It's a great day in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's like 82 degrees here, so it's a little bit warmer than northern Kentucky. But other than that, it's great. Carowinds is open this week for spring break. We've been there like 3 times so far. The park gets rides on Woodstock Express and what's it called? Eat some good food at the park. So it's been a solid.
That's awesome. I love it. I love to hear that.
Well, Brandon, let's talk about Theme Park Predictions. How did you get started with that? Did you launch the channel or did you join in progress? Or just kind of give us a little bit of a backstory there.
Yeah, of course. So I've always loved the philosophy of because I've worked in the parks for years, and I've always loved when Kings Island's my home park growing up. So when they built Italian Job and then Son of Beast and all these other major rides, I always loved the philosophy of why did they build that ride in that location, and what other rides could they have built. So that's kind of where it stemmed from, of just kind of sharing my crazy ideas of predictions that are realistically based, and just kind of share my imagination with, hey, this is what this park could get. Think about it. Could it happen? Maybe, maybe not. And I started it right when the COVID hit. I was closed all year, and there was no sports, and I was stuck at home with the baby and my wife, and I'm like, I'm going to go through a major depression if I don't do something. And I've already watched all the other big YouTubers of the coaster content. It was like, hey, by the way, if they can do it, I can do it. So I just picked up my earpods at the time and started doing crappy videos and got some momentum. Then I upgraded my equipment, one thing after another, and I'm very, very blessed. It took off. It took about 2 months to get monetized, and that makes my wife happy. As Ryan knows, my wife, she's an accountant, so money is very important to her as far as numbers go. So I was very, 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 very blessed to be able to, share my passion. And really, as the channel grows, I'm more focused on just a positive space in the community and helping the parks out, growing the community, getting people excited to go to the parks, and anything I could possibly do to I do it. So
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. It's a sad day and a perfect description of COVID when it's like I ran out of YouTube to watch. That's absolutely
yeah,
cool. So, Brandon,
seriously.
like I said, I've known you for quite a while, and I remember talking to you at a park a couple years ago, and you were really excited to tell me that you had gotten your first meaningful paycheck from YouTube because you mentioned that you were monetized. Now you're up to
Yeah.
28,000 subscribers. What would you
Yeah,
attribute
that's crazy.
the growth to? Because that's a substantial amount of growth in a short amount of time.
It really took off last year around the big strata coaster up at Cedar, where I just started speculating on stuff. And what I do with my channel is I really focus around the whole, like, what if? Like, could this happen? There's other channels out there that says, well, I'm hearing this, or this is my source telling me this, and I'm like, could this happen? Could it not? Here's what I'm thinking is it's a possibility. And so that really spiked my viewership and everything else last summer. And then my recommendation guides really do well for me, where I do like how to have the best day at Kings Island or Cedar Point, etc. And those do really well because people are always looking for tips and tricks on how to visit the parks. And then it just came down to creating interesting content that I find fun, and I use my imagination with like drawings of where roller coasters can go for parks. And I think the ones are like Dollywood, anything Dollywood related, Cedar Point, Universal, Kings. It's going to do well. Busch Gardens, as far as viewership goes, that's why I really don't do a 8-minute video on, let's say, Frontier City in Oklahoma. People aren't really going to. No offense to that park, it's a great little park, but it's just not really what people want to hear, I guess. So it really took off last summer, and it's going strong this year, and I'm very, very excited for the future of the channel. And the meaning of it, the whole Keep Riding Coasters, has really, like, I just started saying it just to say something at the end of the videos, but now it's like I use it in my daily life of, hey, keep riding coasters. I can do this. I'm having a bad day. Let's go. And then I've had other subscribers, dozens of people come at me and say, hey, your little slogan or you're saying at the end of the video really helped life, get through a bad day, or I'm battling a medical issue, but I keep riding coasters. I'll get better. I want to get back on coasters. What do I have to do? Do I need to lose weight? Do I need to do this? So it's really taken on its whole own meaning, which is really cool for me because I've always loved helping people. So it's really just been a blessing for me because not only do I get to share my content, ideas and predictions with the world, I also get to share that I've always been a very caring person and help people out. Whether I know you or not, I always want to be a positive influence.
Yeah, that's great to hear that you want to be that kind of influence with people. Let's talk about your videos. How do you draw inspiration for what you're going to do? And have you found like a sweet spot in the length of a video, how long people will stay with a video?
Yeah, so it just comes down to, as far as it's like the average retention rate on a YouTube video, like I've done so much research, is like a good is like 50%. And it's crazy because it's like that means people really only watch 4 minutes of an 8-minute video. But a lot of people click on the video, maybe it's a bot, maybe it's a person click to, then they back out of it and go watch something else. That's why usually pretty much every video, no matter what genre, no matter what creator, that first like 4 or 5 seconds, you get a lot of drop off. So which is fine, it's normal. So I my goal is around 50 to 55% retention rate. And that's pretty normal for any type of videos. It's just a matter of trying to get to the point as quickly as you can in the video. Past videos, I remember I did a Carowinds 10-year prediction video. I don't have it up anymore, like 2.5 years ago. And I went back to listen to 4 minutes of just me talking about the park before I even got to the first prediction for that first year. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've got to just cut everything thin and just go right to the point. And that's why I don't have an intro. Normally in my videos, I'll say, hey, it's Theme Park Predictions. My name is Brandon, to kind of make it more personal, more one-on-one. But a lot of other content creators have intros, and it works for them. But I've just done the research where if you have an intro, whether it's 4 seconds, 10 seconds, or longer, it's going to drop off. So it's the intro, so they'll skip over it, which affects your retention rate. And then what was your first question? I find
Just
it
kind of
for
like your inspiration for creating a video, like when you're sitting down, you're going to do one, but kind of like, how do you visualize, conceptualize, how do you go about that?
I start with the idea in my head, whether it's something I'm just reading on Screamscape, or I see something on Twitter, or just, hey, I need to do a video about this park. And then I take it to usually do a thumbnail first to kind of get the graphic, because thumbnails are so important, where I spend sometimes an hour on a thumbnail. And then I go into obviously the writing process, and if I drawings I do on my videos, or if it's just going to be B-roll, or if it's going to be me talking on the camera. I'm trying a lot of different things, because as having 2 kids now, my life's a lot busier. So I still want to produce the same amount of content, and not many. I watch a lot of YouTube personal, commentators on YouTube, and they're on camera for the whole entire time. And I'm like, okay, well, I can mix that in, kind of have a hybrid method of, B-roll, and then about this, where I'm sharing my emotions with you, and it's more of a one-on-one personal approach. So I really like doing that, just because it kind of takes the best of both types of videos into one. But I really, I think that's really how I found my sweet spot, and now I'm just basically just creating now. I don't really have any, I need to do this, or I need to find a way to do this. Like, I already have this is my niche, and it's been a blessing.
Yeah, that's the hardest part sometimes. It's just finding what your niche is.
It is, and it took a while. I've been doing this since March of 2020, and actually, I had this Florida business. It's a website I did for travel to Florida. Ryan knows more about it. I did it for like 4 or 5 years, and it didn't really make a whole lot of money, because I'm not a huge salesperson. I might be like, hey, you need to buy this now. Like, hey, do you want to buy this package on my website? Yes, no. So I started the channel because I was taking a walk with my wife, Caitlin, and I'm like, I'm going to do a YouTube channel, talk about my predictions for parks, because I love that again. And I've always loved to be like in Rob Decker's position, be in charge of a big chain of, okay, what parks need what, and why it makes sense, when it can be built, etc. But then I realized I don't want to deal with the corporate, all that is just too much. And I want to be able to share my ideas to about every park, not just, Cedar Fair or Six Flags. But I started the channel back in August of that year of 2019, I believe. I did like 4 or 5 videos, then I just stopped, and I focused on it. And then I picked it back up, and obviously COVID, and got my viewership up and everything else. But I kicked myself in the butt for not starting in August of that year, because you never know where I'd be now. But everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, don't
It does.
disagree. Actually, a couple thoughts. First of all, Don and I have also had the discussion of why didn't we start this during COVID? Because we
Yeah.
probably would be multi.
You were talking about it for a while, though. I remember we were in line for Banshee, and you mentioned something about a podcast. I'm like, yeah, you should definitely
we've
do
been
that.
Yeah, I
talking
think Ryan
about
and
it.
I have kind of kicked it around for what, Ryan, since 2009 or 10, something like
It
that,
was
that we would be doing something together like this.
Yeah, I think the original thought was we should do like a coaster podcast like after you retire. We were thinking like years in advance. And then it came down to, well, everybody does that. Why don't, like, you've got in-park expertise, I've got annoying in-park expertise. So why don't we do one that's a little bit more business oriented? So I like our take is a little bit different from being not necessarily I mean, think of like Dennis Spiegel, the I Am for Fun podcast. That's the closest one to ours, because his is a little bit more on the educational side, but it's also like very, very techy on the educational side, while ours
Yeah.
is like fun, but also like you're gonna learn something, or we're gonna hear what this person has to say, which is why you're on, but yeah, we talked about starting this a lot earlier, if we had started a lot earlier, but hindsight's of course 2020. But you mentioned putting yourself on camera, and I remember you put that on social, and I made a mention of like, absolutely do it, because with my personal experience, there's uh, a sports YouTube. Don, have you heard of 5 Points Vids? Have either of you guys heard of him?
Yes.
So he makes the best, okay, not for kids necessarily, but he makes the best, funniest sports content. And sometimes it's talking about like actual sports, and other times it's like the 5 worst arenas in the NBA or whatever, so all sorts of stuff. Not
Yeah.
unlike your Substack, Don, really, in terms of like it can be about the building or the team or one player. But so I watched him casually, and then he started putting himself on camera just every once in a while, and I started to feel like I knew him at that point. So I became more loyal to like,
True.
oh, he's got a new video up. I want to watch that. So, um,
And to that point, it's crazy because I'm very recognizable now when I go to the parks, which is great because I'm an approachable person. I'm a personal person. I love people coming up to me and saying, "Hey, it's you know." And when I went down to the Fun Spot Area Force One opening, and I said I had like about 50 people came up to me, but my buddy Matt, who tags along with a lot of the stuff I do now, he was like, "No, Brandon." It was like 150 people went up to you and said hi. I'm like, "Really?" I was just in the moment and stuff of it. It's really wild because I guess it's my voice or my face, because I could be in my non-merchandise or branded material and people still recognize me. It's crazy, but I think a lot of it's by putting my face on the camera, which I've been doing now for maybe 2 or 3 months now. Which is nice because again, like you said, Ryan, makes it more personal and you feel like you know that person, and it's definitely it's
right.
pretty
Well, and
cool.
you also have
Yeah,
a
I think that's
personality
important.
where you can tell that if somebody came up to you and you wouldn't be a jerk to them or anything. And I can attest to what you're
Only to
saying.
you, only to you.
Only to me. Our whole circle of friends were convinced for about 5 years that he and I didn't get along because we give each other so much. But so I can attest to it because he came to town for Winterfest, and I remember you had a bunch of people coming up saying like, "You're Brandon, aren't you?" And then you're like, "This is Ryan from the Attractions Group podcast," and like, "Oh, you're Don's co-host." Anyway, look back to the point here. So here's a really good question for you, Brandon, and this is something I was gonna text to you, but I figured I'd save it for the show. So the other day,
Go.
Universal announced that Poseidon's Fury is going to be decommissioned, which is a sad day because I freaking love that ride. We're gonna
It was with the water. What's it called? The water thing, the water feature. The
the
I
water
can't.
tunnel.
You might know the name. Yeah, the water tunnel. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, it wasn't operating with that for a while. I think it is now, but for a while there, it
Yeah,
wasn't doing
when
it.
when
It was
Don
just
and
you
I
walk
went
right
through
through it.
it in November during IAPA, it was
November, yeah.
operating.
Good,
So, but
good,
but here's
good.
my
Yeah.
question, Brandon. So they announced that, and as soon as they hit send on the press release, you had a video up predicting what was going to replace it. How did you do that? Are you responsible for Poseidon's Fury going
Yeah.
away, or did you have this one in your pocket,
No,
or what?
because I forget how that video came about. I think I was talking to someone, just a buddy of mine, and we were just talking about like what would Universal add next, and Zelda. I think it was Todd.
Yeah.
Uh, and we was like, maybe Zelda, or just briefly talked about the Nintendo because that's such a huge. As this movie just came out, which we just took Mason to, and he loved it. I mean, that movie's massive. So Nintendo's a huge IP, and I just think it would be really smart for them to do the same Harry Potter approach, where parks, where you have one section here, one section of this park, and then obviously Epic when it opens in 2024, 2025. In my opinion, it's a no-brainer because you're going to bring a lot more people in to buy multi-day tickets that are going to go to islands or Universal if they did in the area there. So I just was like, if they tore Poseidon's down, this area is massive. Obviously, the Sinbad stunt show is not, they don't have that anymore. The venue's still there, and I just kind of was like, okay. I also have to make it so my videos appear appearance. I'm like, let's do a coaster. Obviously, could it be what type of coaster? And I'm like, maybe it's a wing coaster. It probably isn't, but I figured that's a really cool marketable ride that Florida does not offer. That offers good capacity. It's really them. And if it's a launched one like Thunderbird, we know that's like the best one. So it just kind of, that's how back to how I build my videos. It just kind of one thing led to another, and I'm like, okay, here's how. And I took a graphical image of the area, and I kept mythos in place, and how can this ride, be based around this area and interact with the midways, and then still have room for another dark ride where Poseidon's building currently sits. And it was a really cool video, and it did really well for me. Now it's doing even better because I am not responsible for that, I promise, but it's really it's a cool concept. I'm actually working on a video for USF now, kind of similar, might not be Nintendo based, just because when I first started the channel, I was kind of worried about focusing on the Florida parks because there's so many other people doing it. But then I kind of broke through a few of them. I did one like a year and a half ago that did really well. It just kind of maybe want to do another one for this area, and it's done really well. So I'm excited to get back into the Florida market with my theme park predictions and everything else, since it's obviously Florida's the Mecca.
It certainly is. Brandon, a couple weeks ago, you were among those that attended Media Day for Air Force One at Fun Spot Atlanta. From what I've seen on social media, Ryan's seen on social media, it's open to rave reviews, but we want to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Cool. I mean, their little hurricane coaster is even better. It's like this janked up metal steel coaster that, oh my God, it hurts. No, Air Force One is really, really good. Jeremy from Buckeye Coasters, Ryan and Don, you might be familiar with them. They do a lot of Kings Island stuff. Yeah, and Jeremy used to work at Kings Island when I did. He worked the Eiffel Tower and I think HB back in Paramount days. But anyways, he was down there and he sent me a video because we were driving down from Charlotte that morning. I'm like, holy crap, this thing is hauling. It's like 10 a.m. or 9 a.m., whatever time it was. And so then it's like, okay, this thing, I knew Fun Spot would probably run it as good as they could, knowing that it's fun, this big corporate, park that's, more strict, I guess. And so I'm sure they have the possible and doing whatever they can to make this ride run as quickly as it possibly could. And then we got there, and it was a nice day, probably 75, 80 degrees, and we got the back row. Because I'm an RMC back row guy. That you'll find me in a back row for every RMC usually. Did the back row, and we got off. I'm like, I've been on like 14 RMCs, and this is good, but it's like middle of the pack. I was a little disappointed just because I figured it'd be so much better. So we get back in line, just like everyone else was doing, and we got front row. And then it's like, oh, this is more my style of ride now. And then as the day progressed, because I'm going middle, back, front, everywhere, and we had such a great night. I got probably 25 rides in that night. And then the next day, we went over to Six Flags Over Georgia. And I love that park, but I always have a Six Flags day there. And after like Goliath and Twisted Cyclone was only running one train on Saturday, their flash pass was $150. I'm like, I'm not spending that much money to one train operations on the two biggest rides. So we spent like 3 hours there. Went to an early dinner with Ryan, Big Dave. Remember Big Dave, Ryan, from my wedding? Yeah. So we met him at a steakhouse, and then we're going to go back to Six Flags because we want to do the Scream Break Halloween event, whatever it is, to do some haunted houses and get some night rides. But we're like, let's get back to Fun Spot. We have the annual pass, and Air Force One was that good where we went there that night, got there like 7:30, got 10 more rides on it, and it just solidified it as it's so good. I mean, it's like Iron Gwazi where there's no bad parts of the ride. Everything is phenomenal from the first drop to the Raven Trust dive to the stall. That was probably one of my favorite elements. Then the outward bank turn, I think, is totally underrated because it's like Steel Vengeance, but what I like about it tucked back to the left at the very last second, but you see the brake run right there. So it's like, it's not a head chopper, but you feel like you're going to fly right into it. It's just, overall, it's my number 3, and I've been on like 420 some coasters, I believe, and it's the second best RMC out there. Don't let the size fool you if you're questioning that. And what I tell people is get there and spend a couple hours there. Ride it as it warms up as the evening goes on, because by 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, even 10 o'clock, the night rides were just unbelievable. And it's so good. Sorry for rambling. I'm thinking about how much fun I had texting all my friends I was with. I'm like, man, I need to get back down there. I need some more Air Force One in my life, and I won't even bother with over Georgia. Just get me on Air Force One. It's great, and it's re-rideable, which is crazy because a lot of RMCs, as you know, it's hard to sometimes re-ride constantly, but it's really good.
Well, visually, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any like size like that looks too small. It looks incredibly intimidating. Yeah, it's beautifully really designed too. You know,
it is. Now my only what's it called? My only complaint would be the ending. Same reason why I don't really care for Steel Vengeance ending, where the 3 or 4 or 5 bunny hills that just pop you up real fast. You know.
Yeah, that's
Ryan, you were there. We rode. I was there. I think your first time riding with our group of guys back in 2018. But Air Force One has that little bit more intense ejector. That's my only complaint. I'd much rather have like 2, maybe like a wave turn than a bunny hill instead of like the 4 or 5 back to back to back. But again, it's so good. We all enjoyed it. It's just I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, I mean, but what ride is going to be, you know, canonically perfect? You know, it's fair to have a critique, and you know, and I would say with Steel Vengeance, I agree. Like I do not like that part of the ride, but the rest of the ride is an 11 out of 10.
It's a great. I love Steel Vengeance. Don't get me wrong; it's a fantastic coaster. I just sometimes like our good friend Todd, he's the one that complains about the endings of some of the RMCs, how it's like they just try to do too much, and I'm like, I don't really think so. But then I got to riding like Wicked Cyclone at New England. I'm like, wait a minute, I think Todd's onto something here. And then like Lightning or Storm Chaser down in Kentucky Kingdom, and then it's like, you know, I can see it, but at the same time, like I just enjoy it. And then but it's so good. You guys got to get down to Air Force One, support the park, because I love the owner of what he does and his vision. And I know there's big things coming to all the Fun Spot parks in the future, so it's very cool.
Yeah,
to see.
I mean, I vouch for the Airy family as well, with some business dealings not involving them down south. They've helped my previous and current company out several times, so couldn't find nicer people. Brandon, you know, we kind of touched on this earlier, but you do have a history. You've worked at several theme parks. Talk about your experience working at theme parks. And, you know, what do you draw from that to make your videos nowadays?
Yeah, so I started off in 2004 at Kings Island, operator of the Beast and the Flying Eagles. It was interesting. I didn't really have the best first few months. I got a couple points. I think there was a point method back then, and I remember getting sat down by I think Jessica Naderman, who is now the GM over at Dorney Park, and she's like, Brandon, and my supervisor Josh Page, they're like, Brandon, you got to work on your attendance. You can't be late anymore. I wasn't like not calling in. I was just always late. And I'm like, all right, let me focus here. I was 21. I need to be more professional. Then I wasn't late anymore the rest of the year, and I didn't get fired, of course. Got promoted to be a supervisor of Whitewater Canyon in 2005. And then went to Six Flags New England for an internship in 2000. Went back there in 2007 as the ride operations trainer. So I would basically do like the general certification training for everyone operations before they went out to their rides. And then I said, you know, I don't like New England. That's where I met my wife at the time. Broke up with her as I moved to Florida with our good buddy Todd, and started working at SeaWorld. And did operations as a supervisor down there for 2 years, and then got out of the business for a few years, and then went back to work at Universal as a vacation planner, if you will, at the on-site hotels at the Royal Pacific and Portofino and Hard Rock, basically like selling theme park tickets and talking about the parks. And I was at the lobbies of the hotels. So I have a lot of operation experience, a lot of training experience, and then the the experience of, you know, promoting the parks and selling the tickets and being knowledgeable on that front. So it's been a huge blessing, honestly, as the parks are battling staffing right now, more so than ever before. I'm like, I want to go back to work in a park so bad to help. and just to help mold people and to bring the crew morale up, and just to have that way that guest coming to the park isn't going to be mad if that ride's closed or if that stand's not in operation. But I have 2 kids and I have a YouTube channel now, so I can't do that, but I can still promote the parks. But working in the parks, if you're thinking about working at the parks, do it. It's the best decision ever. I created like a 13-minute video a few months back on my channel explaining all the benefits of working at a park. Really hoping that people Google, should I work in a theme park? If it helps one person, great, or 5, or just to get help. Again, the parks are my life. I have my family, then I have theme parks. So I will do whatever I can to help promote the parks and make sure they have a future, because that's what brings me joy and happiness.
Yeah, Brandon, when you look at the prediction business, it's kind of an empty canvas because you can pretty much make a prediction about anything. You look at how many parks there are in North America, around the world, how many rides there are. I mean, you can everything can be a prediction about how long it's going to last, what's going to replace it, whether they're going to build here, empty land, whatever it is. So for you, how do you go about making deciding what your predictions are going to be like on a weekly or monthly basis?
Yeah, so normally, like, for my video, write out some ideas of, okay, most of my prediction videos are going to be coaster related because that's what people want to see. So I'm not going to spend 8 minutes talking about a new flat ride from Zamperla going into Kings Island. Even though it's a great addition, I'm so happy and I love it. I made like a 4-minute video about it because there wasn't as much to cover, and really nowhere. So I really didn't have a chance to predict anything, which is great. But normally I just jot some ideas down and just looking at what chains the parks have been working with. Like Six Flags, they're working with a lot with RMC. Okay, a lot of the single roller coasters or hybrid coasters, and then kind of go with that approach, molding it after what the other parks in the chain have gotten the last few years. Or then I'll just kind of, like, for Cedar Point, I've been predicting a while the next coaster could potentially be something from Mach Spinner. And because I've been on Time Traveler, I love Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City, and I know Copperhead's done really well for Carowinds because I'm there 80 times a year, and I know the relationship is strong. So it just, in my opinion, makes sense. So I can't route, or then I'll throw in the curveball and think, okay, well, maybe we can get it, or maybe we can have this type of coaster come over that we've seen overseas, to bring something new to this area, whether it's, Dollywood, building a 300-foot tall dive coaster with the train. It's a really cool, it's great because I get to share, again, my imagination and my ideas, and people enjoy it. But then it's also, I started a prediction channel, the word during the pandemic, as we all know, parks were not announcing anything. So it was like, this is not good for me. I got to figure out how I'm going to make this, grow when there was no real news coming out from parks. So that was when I really had to do, like, where my first video that really kind of took off, Cedar Point, where's the like the five best spots to build the next coaster. And I just went through Google Maps and coaster here, and I kind of outlined the area of how big it could be, type of thing. And that concept really did me well the first, for the channel. And then now, of course, we have speculation, we have announcements. Like I'm just very, very happy to see the industry rebound as quickly as they did from COVID and being shut down for a long time. So.
Cool. Yeah, well, parks certainly made announcements in 2020. They just weren't the kind of announcements that really got people excited. Well,
Yeah,
okay.
that's true.
All right.
That's true.
So, you make all these predictions, and you're not necessarily in the business of I've heard this or whatever. It's more like a coaster could fit here or whatever. It's more like your creativity as far as your approach. With that being said, have you ever calculated what your batting average is, like what your success rate is when you've been right about something or at least close?
Yeah, I started it 2 years ago. I did like, I think it was like 20 things would happen in 2023 or 2022. And then I went back this year and I counted up how many that came true. And it was like 50%, which is really good. I mean, this is just my ideas and predictions, so I'll take 25% even. But it was around the 50% mark. And so I did another one for things on 2023 with, and in my intro, I said, last year I had X amount of right on the same type of video format. Now let's see how many I'm going to get right this year, which is great. And what you said earlier too, just a second ago, is I get told a lot of things, whether they're true or not. I've been in the industry now since 2004, so I do know a lot of people from a lot of. I never worked for Cedar Fair, Flying, SeaWorld, and what's it, Paramount. Paramount's no go now. But I mean, I have people that tell me to say anything, and I'd rather keep a friendship than making money off a video of something, just because I don't want to get anyone in trouble for their career-wise or anything like that. But it's definitely fun to take my ideas, whether I know they're right or wrong, and just kind of share to the world of the possibilities.
Well, you hit around 50%. If you were a baseball player with that kind of an average, you'd be making around $50 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Now, who knows what this year will bring? But again, it's fun, and I created a nice niche because you have all these great other YouTubers like El Toro Ryan, Airtime Thrills, and they all do their own thing. And so I wanted to have my own niche, and that's why the prediction aspects really done well for me, because there was nothing else really like it that only focuses on predictions. Well, now I do more than just predictions, but at the time being, it really made me stand out more.
Now let's talk about building and maintaining relationships with the different parks around the country. How do you go about doing that?
Just positive, word of mouth, getting out there and not bashing them. I've seen a lot of other content creators, whether it's on YouTube or Twitter or anywhere else, just, oh, you shouldn't visit this park. Someone made a video that don't visit Cedar Point in 2020. And I'm like, now, why would you do that? Without these open, I can't do this. So I need to do whatever I can to promote the parks. And if I have an issue at the park, I'll go to the park directly and say, hey, by the way, I just want to let you know this is what's happening here. Just kind of give them a heads up type of thing. But, just creating that positive space and the whole recommendation. I love helping people. So I bounced around ideas to have a second channel called Theme Park Recommendations, and I did it for a while, but I just merged everything back to the predictions because it's just too much for me and it was a lot. So this way I can do everything under one platform, but I love the recommendation aspect just as much as the predictions, because I get to help people have a better time at the park, which means they'll spend more money for the parks, which also means they'll go back to the park, visit again, and most importantly, word of mouth. Hey, to go home to their family and say, we had a great time, at Silverwood in Idaho. You guys got to go to this park and check it out, type of thing. So I've been invited to some media days and always do vlogs and promote the parks. And at Carowinds, particularly, I retweet a lot of their stuff and like a lot of their stuff. And I know a lot of the people up there, so it's nice to, they know get a positive experience with me that's going to, promote the parks in the best way possible.
Yeah, you go about it that way. I mean, you're going to have a lot of value for parks.
That's the goal. I mean, again, I hate not being working. I actually went to Carowinds yesterday with El Toro Ryan. First time meeting him. Great guy, by the way. That was really cool to hang out with him for a few hours. And obviously he's a much larger channel and just does fantastic work. But hung out with him, and I told him him and I both worked in the parks, and I'm like, do you miss it? And he's like, yeah, in ways. I'm like, yeah, I do too. And I'm like, but now I don't want to work in the parks. At least I can help the parks with the YouTube channel to promote the parks, So at least I'm not physically employed by the park, but again, I eat, sleep, and everything else theme parks. So it's really a blessing.
You know, Brandon, when we talk about your particular brand, your niche, when we talk about uh predictions, and this is kind of hitting back to what I was asking you before. There's a million YouTubers out there that have been like, I've heard from my friends at Zamperla that this is happening or whatever.
Yeah.
So I know that you've stated yourself that your predictions are based on creativity and not necessarily inside information, but you probably do come across it as people that are around do. Where do you draw the line where you won't address something directly on a video, like where you're playing the predictor and not the spoiler?
Yeah, so I will have a few people reach out to me, whether it's social media or might text me from friends and say, hey, by the way, just want to let you know this is happening here, or I saw this here. And so then I'll respond and say, okay, can I make a video about it? And they say either yes or no. If they say yes, then I look at it as, okay, cool. Let's hype this up and gain some traction for the new ride. It's as you guys know, every piece of marketing's good. I mean, word of mouth, fantastic. And so, again, if someone says don't, then my lips are. I love knowing stuff that people don't know, right? So I know a lot of things from other parks that are happening, and I can't post it on a video because I'm not going to get my my colleague in trouble in any way. And it's really exciting to have this platform where people come to me to see what my thoughts are about this, and I just try to make the predictions as fun and realistic as possible. And I knew I can't sue a park of a type of coaster a couple of years back was announced, and I knew about it like a few months before it came to the park, but I couldn't say anything about it, and so I had to make inaccurate predictions, really. But I still wanted to get the hype going. Then I'm like, well, maybe there's a coaster coming, maybe it could happen, but this area of America, just I built there. But I mean, I guess if it happens, sure, I'll give it like a 10% chance.
So are you
But
admitting to making
again,
fake news, Brandon? Is that what you're telling us?
I'm not. No, I'm not like fake news. But it's just hyping up the.
We'll
getting
call it
hype.
having fun with people.
Yeah, I'm all about having fun, but again, if let's say if Ryan worked at Dollywood and said, hey, Brandon, 2026 we're going to be, I'm hearing a B&M dive, don't say, okay, cool, then my lips are sealed. I will never tell anyone. But if he says, hey, by the way, this is what's happening, and I'm hearing this, and go make a video, then I'm going to go make a video because it's exciting. It gets people excited for things. I just try to do it that way. So I just try to have a nice balance of respect for the parks, respect for my friends or whoever's telling me information, and then a lot of it is just me just predicting my own things, and either they're right or wrong. So it's kind of a it's a fun little playing field of different avenues to go.
So if you were going to split it up percentage wise, what percentage of your predictions are based off of somebody saying like, hey, I'm hearing this, go ahead and make a video?
Probably like 5-10%, not many.
Okay, so it's pretty rare.
Yeah. I mean, it's not too often, which I like that too, because it gets me to have my own stuff come out of my own ideas and stuff. But 10%, if that. But again, a lot of it is information that I'm not going to disclose because I don't want to get my friends in trouble.
Absolutely.
I mean, especially working in the park. So I knew, like at Kings Island, Six Flags, especially, like if you things on social media, because that was like, bro, when I worked at Six Flags, that was like when MySpace was there, and I had a buddy get fired because he made a comment about the Wiggles World. John Manning, right? You met him at my
Yep.
wedding. He got fired from Six Flags because he commented about something like the Wiggles are just dumb or something like that. And with that year, the park opened the Wiggles World, and I guess corporate did not like it. Now there could be more to that story. I don't know, but he said he was fired for that reason, and I'm like, okay, well that sucks. So I'm keep my lips sealed. I'm not saying a
But
word.
when he went down for the Wiggles. That's the most important part.
Yeah, he did.
Brandon, where can people find you on social media with your different channels?
Yeah, so I like posting my links for my videos on there. Instagram, I post a few things there, and then YouTube. I really don't care for Facebook. I post just seldomly on there for basically like links to my videos.
Awesome.
What are
So
the what's the like under theme park predictions, or is there any other things that they have to know to find those channels?
It should be theme park predictions. I know like Twitter is TP_predictions. And then Instagram is, I think, just my name. Oh, theme_park_predictions.
Okay.
awesome. Well, Brandon, I've known you I was thinking about this. It's pushing 20 years, and I think you look at a lot more
Crazy.
than I do, because we are both. Are you 40 yet, or have you turned 40?
Hey now, hey, that's
Hey,
like
I'm
fight. I'll be 40 on May 30th. What about you?
I turned 40 in January.
Oh, good for you. So you're already there.
I didn't think I would make it. Anyway, Brandon. So Brandon, thank you for being on the show. Obviously, I love your content personally. I like how it's not to be taken seriously most of the time, but it is very interesting, and I like your positive attitude. By the way, let's real quick before we go. Your thing is keep smiling and keep writing code. What's your little tagline, and how did that come
Yeah,
about?
it's remember to smile today, think positive, and keep riding
Awesome. Words to
coasters.
live by. Now, the next segment that we're going to do is a segment where we go through 6 of the biggest news in the industry. And we have big news this week, obviously, that you heard about and everything
Yeah.
else. And we kind of discuss the articles and what they mean to the industry as a whole. Would you like to stick around and discuss that with us? Awesome. Well, thank you, Brandon. Well, once again, this is a segment that we call the Pick Six. Don, take number 1 away.
All right. This past week, RMC and Larson International, they merged. I didn't see this coming. Kind of came out of left field for me. What do you guys think?
Brandon, go first.
It's definitely bizarre. Like, I just feel like there's more questions now than answers. I mean, obviously, Larson is not in the coaster industry, but they're in the flat rides. So RMC is in the coaster industry, but not the flat ride part of it. So I think it's smart. I think it's RMC's trying to grow. I think this is a good way to grow because obviously they're the larger company of the two as far as revenue and everything else, because the coasters cost a lot more money than a flat ride. I'm definitely curious to see as to what the plan is for the future of the company, because there's a lot of questions, and it might be smart. Hope it's for the best.
Yeah, well, okay, so this is very interesting for me being like a business person because I'm having trouble seeing what they're seeing. Now, from a simple standpoint, RMC makes coasters, Larson makes flat rides. Okay, that makes sense to us, but from a business standpoint, I don't think that matters. I think part of it is
Yeah.
that Fred Grubb retired, and now the CEO of Larson announced his retirement along with the actual merger. And I think it's maybe a leadership thing. They mentioned the R&D, but there's no cost saving involved with this because they're retaining Texas and Idaho for their
Yeah.
manufacturing. Now, you and other YouTubers have all said RMC is the bigger of the two companies. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I'm not doubting it, but
Might not be.
what's that?
I mean, Larson's been around for a long. It might not be. I mean, Larson's been around for what, 40, 50 years?
The thing though is,
30 maybe.
so
time.
just because
Yeah.
RMC makes bigger products with a bigger price tag, we don't know what their margins are. You know, so it could be
That's
possible
true.
they're building $20 million coasters and making $800,000 after everyone gets paid, while Larson is making $800,000 per Super Looper that's going out there. Um, so obviously, you know, the Larson people are really good people. The RMC people are really good people. So I think that there's
Yeah.
something up the sleeve, but I think that there's going to be more cost cutting involved. They're going to consolidate the two companies. And they're going to be in one location, probably Texas, because it's probably a little bit more it's more centralized in the United States, and there's probably a tax benefit to it. But
Yeah,
super
and for
interesting story.
shipping out stuff too, all the track.
Oh.
I mean, look at Batavia for B&M. It's more central.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
And then there's
and
still questions involved because
Idaho's not.
they're private companies, so we don't necessarily know the terms of the merger. So the press release implies that it's like a 50-50, we're putting it all together. But there's language of with this acquisition. So we don't know if Larson bought RMC, if RMC bought Larson, if one bought stake in the other. I mean, all this will come to light once it
True.
becomes relevant, but it's very interesting what we don't know right now. You know?
Yeah, for me, I just think at the end of the day with this, it just makes, you know, enhances both of them as a little bit more of a powerhouse within the industry.
Yeah. It's almost like, you know, having the Reds get, you know, another great player to come to the team. You know, they trade for another great player to help enhance the team out, you know.
But you could
We just need the Reds to, I know, Don, I follow you on Twitter all the time, and I love all your stuff you post, and it's time. You know, they need to have a good team. It's crazy. And you get city of, you know, Cincinnati, a good baseball squad, and obviously it's early in the year, but it's just crazy.
Well, the thing is, Don's a Reds fan. You should know that.
Yeah, I like the Reds. I like the Tampa Bay Rays better because they've always been my team since I moved to Florida, but I've always liked the Reds, my second favorite team.
Yeah, big Rays fan here too. But you know, just quickly on the Reds before we get back on topic here is the bullpen has cost them 4 games already. So I think, you know, they had some momentum going, but they just couldn't close it out.
Yeah, that's tough.
Fortunately, the bullpen is something that can be developed over the course of a season. I don't think they're World Series contenders, but I think that there is a sparkle of hope, you know? All right. Well, anyway, enough about baseball, more about roller coaster. Okay. So, story number deuce here. Okay, well, so we talked about this earlier, but I do want to dive into it. Poseidon's Fury is closing at Islands of Adventure. They announced it. I think May 8th is the closing date. I'm going to pull up the actual article.
Yeah, something like that.
So that's been the rumor for quite a long time. It's a 20-minute walkthrough attraction that opened in 1999. Closes May 9th, by the way. This is Islands of Adventure at Universal. I thought it wasn't going to reopen after COVID, honestly. I thought it was going to be one of those things that slipped through the cracks and we never saw again. What were your thoughts on that, Brandon?
As far as the closure or them reopening after COVID?
How long? So, you know, starting in, let's say, right before COVID, early 2020, did you start thinking that the time was on?
The ride has always been rumored to get something done to it. Because I remember there's rumors a long time ago for like a Harry Potter roller coaster, like a fighter. That was a rumor that I heard a long time ago, probably from Screamscape or something. I don't even remember where, but I'm like, that'll be cool, you know, because that whole area could just get rethemed to Harry Potter. But then they built Diagon Alley, so there's no need for that. Now they could still do Harry Potter with it, but I don't think they will.
I think it's too far from Harry Potter World.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I don't think Harry Potter World needs to be that large. And I think the Lost Continent is already a really cool themed area, you know. So I definitely feel as if they could really do a lot of cool things here if they kept it non-IP or they went IP with it.
So Don, we did Poseidon's Fury. Was that your first time doing it when we did it, or had you done it before?
No, it wasn't. But you know, hearing the rumblings over the past few years that, you know, it was kind of maybe on borrowed time, I thought it was important to experience it, knowing that potentially could be my last time.
Yeah, well, so we had my girlfriend Erin with us, and shout out to Dave Althoff, who happened to run into us and hang out with us on that ride. But yeah, so for me, it was I always heard it was on borrowed time. It doesn't make sense with the rest of the stuff they have there now. It's very dated. With that being said, that is one of my favorite attractions. So I understand that
really
the cogs keep spinning and that whole thing, but it will be sorely missed. I think it was terribly underrated. I think I was talking to my girlfriend Erin about it, and she was like, "Well, it started off really bad, and the last room was awesome." And I think that's the story of it. The first room's so hokey, the second room's like, all right, and then the last room, and I'm gonna try not to spoil it because there are people that are gonna experience it for the last time over the next several weeks. But the last room is just mind blowing, even in 2023 standards. Awesome, Don. What's
All right,
next?
the next one. Well, due to high demand, once annual passes at Walt Disney World went back on sale, it caused the system to crash.
Shocking.
Now, I was a little bit surprised that normally when they do these different kind of events or pass holder previews and things, they have everybody kind of go into a queue. They didn't do that this time, so that surprised me a little bit. But apparently, high demand.
Yeah. Well, it's a heck of a problem to have for Disney, don't you think? Because it's so high demand that they couldn't sell them. Imagine selling a car and it's in such high demand that you have to just tell people no for 2 years. I think that's pretty incredible. Brandon, are you a annual pass holder for Disney? I know you frequent Florida.
Yeah, no, I'm a Universal guy. I'd rather ride roller coasters, and I do SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, and I haven't been to Disney since I lived there in probably like 2011, 12. We bought
Yeah.
passes, but I mean, I like what they're doing with a lot of the parks, but I just Universal's just it's all about to me. Universal's really taken over Florida, and with Epic opening, I mean, I think that people will still buy annual passes for Disney, but for a while there again, like you said, you couldn't buy them. So now all of a sudden they're available again, and so it's like I just think that's a bad business model, in my opinion, of course.
Well, and Disney's less in your demographic target than Universal too.
Yeah.
Don, you're a regular Florida guy. Have you ever been an AP holder, or are you going to get one someday? Or
There will be someday, and it'll be both parks, Universal and
Yeah.
the Disney parks. But no, most of the time it was just, I would go down there, visit the parks for 4 or 5 days at Disney, then a couple of days at Universal. My daughter, at the when we were going real frequently before COVID, she was at that age where, we were there together all the time. But she's getting married, gonna be doing her own things, and it's just me and my wife going. We're probably gonna be a little bit more inclined to spend more time at Universal because she's a big Harry Potter fan and I'm a big roller coaster fan. So it, makes a little bit more sense if you only have a select number of days down there.
well, yeah, and I think that there's a certain time where it makes sense. Just like your local park. I remember like Kings Island back. This is years ago. That all the numbers have changed greatly, but it pays for itself in 2 visits. There's probably a mentality
Yeah.
like that with Disney, and it's probably like 5 visits because the passes are over $1,000, but it's like $150 to get in or whatever.
It's crazy.
Awesome, cool. So
I have real fast, Ryan. I'm going to add a seventh question to your pick six, and that is Ryan. When are you going to be visiting Carowinds?
I will go to South Carolina, but not North Carolina.
Well, you're going to ride Afterburn, and that's it. Well, Intimidator.
And I'll ride part of Fury. No,
Come on, man. You've been telling me you're coming down to Carowinds since I moved here in
first of all, this
2015.
wasn't what we agreed to because there's only 6 in the pick six, and I got blindsided. I was not prepared for this. And secondly, Aaron has been bugging me about going to Carowinds specifically, so you will see us down there this summer. I won't
Okay.
necessarily tell you I'm going, but again, this is why our friends think we hate each other.
Yeah, well,
Awesome.
I'll be there this summer, so I'll look you up, Brandon. When I'm down.
Yeah, because
I
you'll be
appreciate
there the same
that.
time as me. Awesome. Then again, we did run into each other at a random taco place a couple months ago. All right, so
Yeah.
more good news. So Boulder Dash, it's getting some Titan Track. Let's pull up the details here. So Titan Track is a product of Great Coasters International. It's like a steel version of wooden track. So it maintains the integrity of a wooden coaster more so than like an RMC conversion would be. But it makes it out of steel, so it makes maintenance and smoothness even better. So for the 2023 season, in which Lake Compounce is opening on April 29th, they've installed 580 feet of Titan Track. So I have not yet been on Titan Track. We did have Jeff Pike from Skyline Attractions, who is on the patent for Titan Track on the show, and he talked about it in great detail. So I highly recommend looking that up because it was a fantastic conversation. But Don, you made it out to Fun Spot when we were down there for IAPA. Did you get to ride White Lightning, and what was your thoughts on the Titan
I
Track?
did. It's good. I mean, it's a nice, fun, enjoyable experience. It's, you want to rewrite it because it's not rough. So I think it's a good thing. And when you're looking at this particular attraction, Boulder Dash, it is breathing new life into an older coaster. It's going to preserve it for future generations. So yeah, I'm all excited about this.
Yeah, I am too. I think it's awesome. I'm so excited about the future between that and the Gravity Group stuff. Brandon, have you been on any Titan Track yet?
I think, yeah. What's it called? White
Lightning.
The Wonder
White
Fun
Lightning.
Spot. Yeah,
White
yeah,
Li-
it's
yeah.
really good. I rode it last year. It's solid, and I love Boulder Dash, and I'm thrilled that they're putting that much track onto it. It's just going to make the ride even better. So I'm very excited. Boulder Dash as well as the Titan Track and GCI.
Excellent.
Well, talking about making rides better, the experience more enjoyable, Universal has patented a new restraint system. We'll start with you, Brandon. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't even know anything about that. So fill me in if you
You
don't
didn't
mind.
predict that?
I didn't know. I didn't.
Your crystal ball stinks, Brandon. Awesome. Okay, so just to clarify, the restraint system, there isn't a lot to it, but essentially what it seems like is it's going to do a better job. This is the way I'm interpreting what was reported on it. It's going to do a better job of being able to predict when, like, it's got like the mock, kind of like what's the new mock ride at Carowinds? I'm drawing a blank.
Copperhead Strike.
Copperhead Strike. It's got like the over the shoulder
You know
restraint.
that if you'd been there, Ryan.
Exactly.
It's really just not a deep memory for me. But
Ryan, there's more parks out there than Kings Island and Kings Dominion and Cedar Point.
First of all, I went to Busch Gardens Williamsburg for the first time. I'm a Gold Pass member to Dollywood, thank you. And I'm a good guy to know. So I'm not the same Ryan that I was in 2004, thank you. Anyway, but the way that I'm reading the patent is it's a lot like the mock rides restraint, where it looks like an over the shoulder restraint, but it's actually on, like the lap. So it's a lap bar, but it's like a sensor system that's better at detecting when it's as shut as it can be, because a lot of people have to take the walk of shame that probably shouldn't, that probably aren't dangerous to be on, but there's no way for a PLC to detect. All it can say is it's not down far enough. This seems like they're working on a solution for that, where if I get on, then I can have the same ride experience as somebody that's not even necessarily somebody that's really big, but somebody with like thick thighs or just weird body proportions. Where how many people have we seen that like can't fit in a PTC train, and it's like, really? This is what they're trying to accomplish. So good on them. Don, did you get to read the article? What were your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, it's just, I think it's good, number one, that you're trying to make it, those adjustments so, more guests can ride, especially like, let's say Universal down there, some of the Tampa Bay Bucks want to go ride roller coasters. Well, a lot of them can't right now because they are bigger, this offensive, defensive linemen and things like that. So I think it's a good thing like that. But, every 5, 10, 15 years, you're seeing different enhancements in that with restraint systems. So I think that just falls in line with that, you're always looking for ways to improve it.
Yeah, it's you made an interesting point, and I was going to say that too. Like, because I remember when we had Jeff Pike on the show, he was talking about the Pescetti Bowl, and this was before they announced that they had sold any of them or anything like that. This is when they were in pure concept, but he was mentioning that like they designed it so it can accommodate something like 98% of U.S. riders, and U.S. riders, they're big riders. They're more like the Tampa Bay Bucks than they are the Michelle Kwans out there. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think that a lot of people are turned away. It's kind of an accessibility thing. It'd be one thing if you can pin it on like this person's immobilized because they clearly have like a very large weight issue and stuff, and that's a whole other topic. But when it's like a good percentage of people that usually like weight probably isn't a problem in their day-to-day life, I think it's cool that they're trying to be more accommodating to more people, and we'll
Yeah,
get
I
there.
agree.
We will be at 100% in 10 years. I think that's going to be the cool part about it. Awesome. Cool. So, further news. So Splash Mountain finally has a closing date at Disneyland. So it's going to become Princess and the Frog, and they announced that it's closing on May 31st. Um, I don't have much to say on this because I've never been to Disneyland. I rode Splash Mountain at Disney World, so that's kind of a bummer. I only rode it once. But Don, you've been to Disneyland. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, you knew it was coming, but I mean, I'm one of those, people that it's one of my first ever Disney attractions, both at Magic Kingdom and also my first visit to Disneyland. It was like one of the first attractions that I did. So, I love it the way it is. Um, but it's been around time, and it's something that I guess are gonna, a lot of people are gonna miss it. But it's kind of nice that there's going to be something a little bit different and a new experience, and you've got a whole new age of Disneyland fans and Disney World fans. They're all those 3, 4, 5-year-olds now. So it might be a little bit more of a connection with them than what you have right now.
Yeah, I don't think the kids have seen Song of the South, but you're right, and it stinks because they've got iconic characters, iconic songs. The problem is that I mean, forget the fact that the IP is terrible, but like that's off the table. But the fact that nobody's seen it and nobody can really connect with it, especially in the modern audience, is that's what's doing it in.
Yeah, so it's time.
Yeah, but it's classic though.
It is.
I see what you guys are saying, but like, it's like them redoing the Matterhorn. Like I would be mad as ever, and that's been open for a lot. I think longer, or at least, yeah, definitely longer.
Yeah, I mean,
it just I don't know. I'm torn on it. Like, I see why they're doing it. I think it's smart to a point, but also it's one of those rides that it's just a classic and staple. When you go there to ride that experience, and it brings back your childhood memories of now I bring my kids to ride the same exact ride, and now they're getting rid of that, and it's like ET closing at Universal Studios, Florida. I'd be really mad if they would do that. I mean, obviously they probably will eventually, but I think I'm torn.
Yeah,
Brandon,
anytime
I'm the
they
same
remove
way
a ride,
there.
I think there's an argument though for what you're saying. If it's 5 years old, maybe not, but something that like Zippity Doodah is Disney World and is Disneyland, I totally see where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Brandon, like for me, I mean, just a ton of memories, and you said it's iconic. When you think of Disneyland or Walt Disney World and Magic
I've been
Kingdom,
on
I mean,
both
it's
as
one of the
well.
first things that come to mind
Yep.
with that.
I've
But
been
I
on
will
both
say
of those.
this,
Thanks.
that, I always have this thing where, I feel that it's, it is okay to respect history, but you can't revere it, and you got to keep moving forward.
Yep.
Yep, exactly.
That's fair.
Now, so I had a discussion with Brandon earlier, and he said, in the interest of fairness, since we're drilling him with questions, he has a couple questions for us. So, Brandon, are you prepared to do this?
Yep. Let me pull them up here.
This will be fun, Don, because we haven't really been on the receiving end of questions yet.
All right, so here it is. Where do you guys see the podcast this time next year, and what are your podcast goals? And how can I help in any way?
I mean, it grows a little bit each week. I see the podcast becoming, I think, more interactive with our audience. I think I see it, having, maybe once a month sprinkling in some YouTube lives, and making it more, again, that audience participation, interactive, letting our audience ask us the questions, just like you are right now. I see our social channels being a big part of what we're doing. With Twitter continuing to grow, doing things like with YouTube Shorts, those kind of things. So it's not just that weekly podcast. I think there's a lot of other things. I see it evolving into where maybe 3 or 4 times a week there's different content that we're putting out there on YouTube with these quick hits, these 4 or 5 minute type things when something does break in the industry that like we're doing here with the Pick Six, where we're just focusing on that. So I just think the when you do it once a week, you can build your following, but I think you need to be a lot more frequent for us to grow it to where Ryan and I both believe it can go.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would say that, to narrow down specific goals, My short-term goal, something I want to do in the next like year or so, and this is something that I pitched to Don because I saw this in a dream of all things, and I was like, that would be really cool. It'd be cool to do the podcast, like record the podcast, broadcast it live, but also pipe it through speakers at like an enthusiast event, like a Coaster Mania or like the Coaster Crew thing at Dollywood this weekend or something like that. That would be really neat to do that because it would be, just have it so people in line for whatever rides open can hear it, and maybe people can submit questions or yell at questions, or we can grab a random person and have. I think that would be really fun. So that would be like a short-term goal, and then a longer-term goal that Don and I have talked about from day one is we want to do this so at least we're in person. I have the editing capabilities to do like really cool stuff, as you and I have actually discussed quite a bit, Brandon. But there's only
Yeah.
so much you can do with popping back and forth over Skype, and there's quality issues and there's sound issues and stuff like that. So Don and I, once if and when the podcast starts making money, our big investment's going to be, we want to maybe like rent a space and soundproof it and kind of make it our studio. And then if we have a guest on, maybe have them over an electronic channel of some sort, but we can be on and we can do multicam and stuff like that. That's where I really want it to be, because I feel like we've got all the horses in the barn and they're ready to be let out for that. It's just a matter of the
Yeah.
resources to do so. As far as how you can help, Brandon, you being on the show is helps us greatly. I'm so excited that you're able to come on. This is the second time we've tried to do this. It didn't work out the first time, but you know, uh, if you can promote us through your channels, you've got a following, and anybody that wants to
Yeah.
hop on and hear, because they want to hear your handsome voice and see my sweaty face because it gets hot in here for no reason at all, then that would be fantastic. I really appreciate anything that you do, and I do appreciate your work as well, Brandon.
Yeah, I'd
Appreciate
agree
that.
with that. Brandon, just letting people know we exist.
Good. With that, of course, I'll be happy to do that. And finally, theme parks, obviously, like everywhere else since COVID, have been battling staffing issues. I've seen that pretty much every year besides Florida parks. Um, what do you guys think the future is, or how can theme parks battle issues? Because obviously, it not only are we paying a lot more per employee. I mean, when I worked at Kings Island, I made $6.50 an hour. So now they're paying 15, 17 bucks an
Yeah.
hour, which is a lot more money. Like, how can theme parks? It concerns me, walking through the parks and seeing rides closed, or this show not an operation at Busch. Like, what the heck, how what do you think the future is, as far as, is there a silver lining on it? Is it worries me,
Yeah, Don, you want to go first?
I think it's a valid concern, but I think it's not just theme parks; it's everywhere that you go. I mean, you go through a fast food place. There's one or two people working when there used to be 15. I went through one the other day, and it was one person was working the drive-through. They took the order, then they went and put the food on the thing, and then he said, "Oh, park over here, and I'll bring it out to you," because there was only one person working and one person inside the register. So it's not just our industry. I think it's everywhere. I think people got used to not working
Yeah.
during COVID, or working from home and finding those kind of things to do. But it's rebounding. I think it's getting better. I think you're seeing those levels across the industry getting better.
Yeah.
Some other places, but it's going to take time. And I think that maybe another year or two, we'll be back to maybe where we were in 2018, 19, which was still a struggle back then. But I think it's going to get back to that point again.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is if we could work on, automate the what's it called? Removing some positions to make it so you can do food. Obviously, type in what you want, scan your pass, pay your credit card, then you wait in line for the food. One's has the new Don. You got to come down and check out Aeronautica Landing. It's beautiful.
Oh, I plan to.
Job with it. But Terminal A, the new restaurant, it's not on the meal plan, unfortunately, but I wanted to go and get a drink and try out some of the food with my family last week. And so you just scan the barcode on the table, then you order on the Carowinds app, and then food comes out 5 minutes later. It's great. And it's like, this is easy. So I think there's a lot of things they can do with that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it too, in my opinion, as an operator, less people working on the coaster platforms and see more on the safety of the computer. When Orion has the screen, so it just tells you which seats are locked. Disney doesn't have people checking restraints. They just pull them down. They do visually checks, then they dispatch. Not saying Cedar Fair or Six Flags or other parks should do that. It might cut down on some positions because obviously these parks, there's so many employees, not just operations, but behind the scenes and food, games, security. It's pretty crazy to how many people, we've all worked in the park, or Ryan, you've been to park so many times, exactly too. There's just there's a lot of people that have to come together to make the park operational.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you hit the nail on the head. And I remember, Don, you and I had a discussion early COVID. We were texting, and you used a term that I absolutely hate. And I remember arguing with about it just because this gets under my skin when people say the new normal. I hate that because that makes me think of like, oh, they dropped the nuclear bombs and the new normal is nuclear winter. But with all events and with time, things change regardless of what happens. And I think that automation is a huge thing that did happen. That's the first thing that popped in my head when you asked your question, Brandon. If you look
Yeah.
at like McDonald's and stuff, well, I mean, I
Yeah.
went to on my way out of Pigeon Forge a couple weeks ago. We stopped at Taco Bell, and it was like 3 kiosks, and they said
Yeah.
basically hit this button if you want to pay in cash and have a cashier. So they make it almost more inconvenient. But I also I think I like that though. And I'm not a big fan of like people losing their jobs to machines or whatever. But the fact that I can go through and take my time and look at the menu and decide what I want and delete stuff and add stuff, to me that's a huge
Yeah.
benefit. And that's why I like ordering pizza through an app too, because like, okay, who wants pepperoni? No, you don't like sausage. Okay, we won't do sausage. If you can't do that on the phone, but as far
Yeah, it just takes more
ex-
time. And we went to right down the street from us. They opened up a new, I think it was Longhorn
Mhm.
Steakhouse, and so we wanted to go do it. And at the end, the service was slow because they didn't have staff. And I'm very much more respectful nowadays with people, and I always say thank you for working. I don't take money off the tip because they're trying the best they can. And they had the little thing at our table, scan here to pay. And normally before, I hated that stuff. Like I know Olive Garden has it, and like Red Lobster, they had a little black kiosk thing,
Mhm.
whatever it is on the table. And I always say, nope, I want to pay personal to you because I like that interaction. But now it's like that's one more step for that waitress or waiter to come back to my table to do this. Then I can just do it on the computer, on my phone, pay it on my phone or whatever how it was. I get it now. I don't like it, but to help them out, they're overwhelmed with all the, I'm okay with it. But yeah, I definitely feel like the parks have got to focusing more on streamline, eliminating certain positions and focusing on, return on the revenue because you're paying more employees and you have to, people aren't showing up to work, that rides can't open. Like, not saying you have to eliminate every position, but I think there has to be a, technology based going forward in the theme parks because there's like entertainment or businesses that offer this many. I mean, like the Red Stadium, Great America. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of employees, but not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I mean, for theme parks, there's so many, and so you have to have so many people going to work. It's a lot. So I'm very curious to see what the parks are doing, and I'm here to support however I can.
Well,
But
appreciate
good
that.
times.
Was that your last question, Brandon, or did you have more?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean that's get down to Carowinds. Carowinds, they're doing a great job with Aeronautica. Very excited for the future, and I love what Cedar Fair is doing for Carowinds. And just get out and support the parks, as they need it. And obviously, work at a park if you want to. I highly recommend it. And check out the podcast and theme park predictions.
Perfect. I will link to your stuff in the descriptions below.
Perfect.
Awesome. Don, any final words of wisdom?
No, it's been fun. Thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Hey Don, pleasure. I met you I think once with Ryan actually by Ice Street Fountain a couple years back,
Yeah.
but
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thank you once
awesome.
again for being on the show. Really appreciate it. So he's Theme Park Predictions on
Appreciate it,
YouTube.
guys.
And I will link to your stuffs in the description. But Brandon, once again, thank you so much for being on the show. Don, thanks for co-hosting. It's been a pleasure, everyone. Sorry it's a day late. It's been a busy week. But we'll see you next time. Bye.